So sorry to disappoint you guys. I'm not the woman speaker to start the day, but I'm sure you have some more down the line later on. But anyway, I'm going to talk to you a bit about, who we are, how it started, and a bit about the story of, taking a business from zero to where we are today, and how you can, how we grew internationally to different markets and so on. So before we start, just to kind of maybe look a bit back, in 2011, I was speaking with two friends of mine. You can see them here, Ben and Miguel. We were like, brainstorming ideas. We had all this, like thinking we wanted to be like entrepreneurs. We wanted to build a startup or something. And, like we had a bunch of ideas and so on. We didn't really know quite exactly what we should do. But anyway, Miguel was finishing his master's. So we said the moment he finishes, we quit our jobs, we get together, and we do something. So with that in mind, we basically quit. I was, at the time, living in China. Ben was living in the UK, in London. Miguel was in Boston. And we literally had to find a place to meet, to get together, to start working on our startup. Miguel's Portuguese, and he kind of said, it's a cool country, it's warm, like days like here today in Berlin. You have them every day in Lisbon. It's cheap, has good food, it's a nice place. So why don't we go there? So that's literally what we did. I got the plane from Beijing to Lisbon, well, to Porto, actually, so north of Portugal. It was my first time there, didn't know what to expect. We met there, and, in the beginning there, then we said, like, let's find a place to stay, let's rent a room, let's see, how we can find something. And of Portuguese, like, people, friends of us or from Miguel that were there, they pointed us to these kind of ads on university walls. And we were like, is this the only way to really find an apartment or a room or a place to stay? And, this was basically a really frustrating experience, calling these random ads. They were in Portuguese, and I don't speak Portuguese. Calling these landlords, and like they don't pick up the phone or nothing's available. Really, really bad experience, And what we've seen is that, it's not just us. Obviously, we moved to Portugal. It's students. They face this kind of challenge, when they look for a place to stay for a year, for an academic semester or whatever, when they go to study somewhere. We were lucky. We found the place, so we're not homeless. But like this made us thinking, and with our idea of let's do a startup and let's build something, we really look at this. We started to explore the space, and we said, we'll enter this market, we'll do something about it, and try to fix this problem, not just there in Portugal, but on a global scale. So we came up with a vision. We wanted to build the global trusted brand for student accommodation, starting, where we were in Portugal, but really get that service and improving the experience for all the students out there who go to study, in their hometown or in other cities or in other countries. Looking at the market, we've seen a huge opportunity. Students globally spend over 400 billion pounds on non-academic expenses. So that means that doesn't include the tuition fees you pay to the university. And not just that, a third of that number, a third of the number you see on the right, it's what they spend on rent. So it's a huge opportunity, huge market. There's a lot of other categories, so we were thinking, what can we do about all of this? There was actually a drugs category we took off for investors mainly, so we didn't want to have that in the investor decks. But, we were getting excited about this space. We've seen not just that, not just the market is big, but we've seen that, when the student goes to study somewhere, accommodation is really their first worry. It's the first thing they try to address. It's also their biggest expense. But the market, like you saw before, is really fragmented. It's offline. It's not efficient. You still, you don't have any easy solution. You go on holidays now, you have Booking.com or Airbnb, and you can book an apartment or hotel. If you go to study now to Singapore or Sao Paulo or to even to here to Berlin, like maybe you don't have that sort of services. So that's the challenge you have. We decided to really solve this problem, for students, by bringing, convenience, choice, trust, really addressing the challenges, students have. And we started to do that by, aggregating all the apartments, all the rooms in one platform, verifying them, taking photos, videos, floor plans, really making sure you have all the information you needed, and then provide a platform where you can easily, find the available options and rent them in a very smooth, seamless way without any hassle or viewings or that kind of things. You can see here how this works today. It's a lot easier now with UniPlaces to rent a place than those ads on the walls of universities, where you can now easily find, browse what you want, search any criteria, price, location, Wi-Fi, balcony, whatever you want, and book a place literally in a couple of clicks. So obviously, being a marketplace, we work with students as well as with landlords. We work with our providers to bring more and better supply to the market. It's one of the challenges that exist in cities. There is rooms that students rent, but a lot of them are not great. So one of our missions is to really bring more of that supply to the market. You can see here an example of a residence in Lisbon where we are co-branding it, and it's all exclusive. So you can only book it actually in UniPlaces. And we work on that sort of structure across a number of cities in Europe now, where we have branded supply, branded residences, that you can only find on UniPlaces. But then we also work on bringing more and more landlords to this space. Another thing that we eventually did, we built a great team. You can see here a team photo from last year. But one of the things that is really core in our team is that we're very customer-focused. From the beginning, we've seen that it really pays off to listen to the customers. And what you can see here, your customer doesn't care how much you know until they know how much you care. This is a really important quote. It's believe in as a company. We want to help customers the whole way. So that to make sure that someone goes to study somewhere doesn't need to face this experience that we had before. You don't know the language, you don't know the reality, you don't know the country. You go alone for the first time out of your family house sometimes. So really helping them, supporting them is really important. So as I mentioned, we built our team then out of Portugal. We moved to Lisbon. We set our office there. We were lucky we got selected as one of the coolest offices by Inc. magazine out of Portugal. And this is actually one of the really important things. It gets people to really want to work there. It's part of the culture, part of the, getting people engaged. And also it's great to have our base in Lisbon. And from there, we started then build a global business where we are today, but with our headquarters out of Some key initiatives that we've been releasing recently. We have a student guarantee, so we want to make sure that we kind of guarantee to the student that they will have a good experience. So if something goes wrong, we help them. If the apartment doesn't match what they wanted, we move them elsewhere, and really make sure that things go well. We have a scholarship where we kind of sort of give back to the community, to students. We have a Best Student City campaign, and we have an ambassador program where today we have over 200 ambassadors across Europe. So they work on different universities and promote the brand on one side, but they're also our face, the face of the company to the students on campuses. Some of the partnerships we've been building with key stakeholders in the industry and universities, student organizations, and so on. Basically, an organization that can help us getting us closer to that vision every day. So finally, a few things in terms of where we're today, in terms of numbers. We're operating in 33 cities in 6 countries. We have about 50,000 rooms published on our platform today, and the number keeps growing 100% every year. Students, universities, 100 universities are recommending us to their students as the kind of default place to rent an accommodation. Students from over 165 countries booked their place through UniPlaces. So although we operate in 6 countries, pretty much students come from anywhere. We booked about 3 million nights of accommodation so far. That's about 50 million euro in rental contracts for our landlords. In 2017, so this year we are aiming to do 100 million, so it's a key milestone. Obviously, we've been growing, 3, 4, 5 times year on year, and we're aiming to hit this big milestone this year, which is really important for us, and it shows how we can build a big impact in the market. And just finally, we raised about 30 million from some global investors, including Atomico, Klarna, like you mentioned before, Supercell, Trivago, and so on. And our team is about 160 people now across all the different offices. So to finish here, when I say this, to remember Rome was not built in one day. It is very important because it takes time to build a business. It takes time to build a startup. If you want to really make a big impact, in the market, in the world, in the community, you need to put effort, time, really sweat, and eventually it's going to get there. So thank you. I think there's some questions as well from the team.
Hello? Great.
Hello.
It works. Thank you, Mariano. I have a couple of questions about international expansion.
Yep.
So when you first look into expanding into another market, how do you first familiarize yourself with the business protocols, the customs, the culture of the nation's consumers that you're interested in?
It's a very important question. So we started in Portugal, went to about 6 countries across Europe. The fact is we grew even more. We kind of tested them as well. Now we're focusing on these 6 core markets. But, it's really important to really understand, how the local, on one side, the culture, the whole political side, the legal side, all these kind of things are very important. In what relates to UniPlaces, some of the specifics that apply to our business is all about, how many students are there, how many are international, how many, do get on-campus accommodation, and how is that whole, supply accommodation structured in those markets? Because obviously, if there's no provision for accommodation at all, that's when we can have a bigger impact, we can have a faster growth, and so on. So it's really about identifying what key factors, in this case, relate to our business, and research them, as well as obviously the more generic, like things like regulation and so on, which can have also a good or bad impact as well on the company.
Does that mean you have a team on the ground researching, or are you doing this all remotely from Portugal?
So we have a team, obviously our main team is in Lisbon in Portugal, so we try to do as much as we can from there. Especially before we enter a new country, we don't ask the team and office if we're not kind of sure. So we do our research, we do our work remotely, but then we set a team, we put people on the ground. We have today offices in Berlin, in Milan, in Madrid, Barcelona, and so on. But that's once we've really committed to develop the market and to grow it from there.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to be coming to Germany soon.
So we actually launched in Germany recently. So we hired a GM here. We have a team in Berlin today. So we started to operate here, and first in Berlin. But the objective is to get across the whole country in all the student cities out there.
And how is the product going to be a little bit different in Germany as compared to other regions?
So Germany has an interesting characteristics. It has a lot of big professional, operators of student accommodation. Like real estate funds with literally $1 billion+ funds investing in student housing. So we work with a lot of these big players. While in countries like Spain, Portugal, the market today is still a lot more fragmented. You have more individual rooms, apartments, and so on, and less of the big kind of professional players.
I'm curious of an instance where you tried expansion and maybe it just absolutely fell flat, or things did not go as well. Do you have an example or a story to share?
I mean, you guys in Berlin, so maybe you have heard we had a competitor here from Rocket called Nespik. So they, Rocket tries to clone companies. So I spoke with Oliver one day, and then next week I found out they invested in a competitor. They were threatening we're going to grow over the whole world, the whole Europe, and so on. So what we said, okay, let's actually at least plant our flags in all these countries, successfully, so that we are there kind of before them. But we've seen that was not the right approach, so just planting a flag, doing a little bit in every country is not really worth it. To make the business succeed, you need to build the liquidity, you need to build the presence, you need to have all the supply, all the partnerships, and so on, not just a little bit here and there. And we kind of pulled back from a lot of these markets. We kind of started to grow at a time.
And what should early stage startups, or where should they turn to for advice or best practice guidelines?
So I think the best is to go for mentors. There's plenty of people out there who kind of been there, done that. I think that's really useful. So find them. Events like these are probably a good place to start, I would say. But I think it's really important. Learn from experience from other people. You will make mistakes. Everyone made mistakes. We keep making mistakes every day. So if you can ask someone and can help you avoid a few, it helps you accelerate and get a step ahead faster.
I've often heard that it's recommended to start in similar countries as to where you've already started.
Yeah.
So do you follow that line of logic? Do you agree?
It's true. So, I mean, in our case, we started in Portugal, then we went to Spain, which is next door. It's not that far. Culturally and everything is a bit similar in terms of, how the student market works. So I think it pays off to go to similar markets. If you also expand, internationally too far away, you go from Europe to whatever, to Australia, and then you have different time zones and so on. It makes the whole business more complex. And unless you have already a solid base, you're probably gonna burn a lot of cash and not gonna get that far. So it's better to really find synergies between countries, like ideally network effects or things like that, and use that as well to define like the next moves of where you wanna go.
And my last question for you, so after Germany, what comes next?
So a good question. We're still working that. We can't say everything, but our objective is to be in every market out there. So Europe is still quite big, so there's plenty of room out there to grow. But yeah, US and other countries are also in the pipeline.
Okay, I think we'd like to open up the questions to anyone in the audience who's interested. Is there a mic? Any questions? You guys really do need coffee. The gentleman up here.
Okay, there's a mic. Okay, great.
Take a box.
My name is Björn. I'm operating co-working spaces for startups and freelancers. And I'm right now planning to open co-working space for students, but I didn't do any research until now. Now I saw your figures about for which things students are spending money. Did you do any research about co-working spaces? So I didn't see any amount students are willing to spend for a co-working desk.
So students, to be honest, they don't have much money. That's a reality in most places. I don't know how much they would spend in co-work spaces. They tend to have spaces on their universities where they can work and so on. So I wouldn't be able to tell you that, but maybe there is some opportunity there as well. Is there a question there?
I just wanted to ask, how many spaces or apartments do you need to enter a market?
So, when we enter the market, obviously we start from zero. Our objective is to get from 0 to 500 as quickly as possible. That means in the first month or two, acquire those 500 units at least, to really start investing in marketing, in performance, and so on. It pays off to have some volume. If you have 5 apartments in a city and you start investing in marketing, it's not gonna work. If you have 500 or 5,000, then you can actually start getting good conversion rates, good unit economics, and so on. In pretty much any marketplace, as you probably seen out there, supply really kind of drives demand. So you need to have that volume of supply as quickly as you can. Any other?
All right. Any other questions out there? Gentleman up here.
Okay, it does feel weird. You told us about your great office.
Yeah.
And you showed us some pictures of your team, which is quite
Pictures of?
Sorry?
Pictures of what?
Of your team.
Okay, yeah.
From your company. So what do you do to get your talents? How do you recruit? Yeah.
So, that's a good question. Recruiting is never easy. There's always a war for talent and so on. Now, obviously, having great culture, that really, really pays off, because eventually people from your team will tell everyone out there how great that place is to work. So the good office is important, but more than the office is the culture, is like how you interact with the teams. People need to feel that they want to be there, they want to be part of that. They need to believe in the vision, so really hire people who, they're not looking for a job, they're looking to be part of something great, and really believe in what you're doing. Because then, they're going to go the extra mile, they're going to really work hard and enjoy to be part of it. And I think it's never easy, but that's, I would say that's core. But in terms of how you actually find those people, obviously you need to search broadly. One of the challenges we do face in Lisbon is that not all talent is in Portugal, So there's great, let's say, engineering talent, great creative, great people with great language skills and so on, but you always, find a few that you cannot find out there. So we need to reach broadly. We always, when we find, especially in the more senior levels, hires we want to make from outside of Portugal, we bring them to Lisbon, we take them out, and show them around the city, and they actually, it pays off because Lisbon is a good place as well, and people enjoy the city, they like what they see, and obviously we can use that as well to convince them, to move, even sometimes with their families and everything, from Germany or UK or whatever to Portugal.
Do I have a follow-up?
Please.
So since I totally agree with you that the culture of a company is essential to get the talents, but I really struggle to convince my clients. How do you communicate your culture? Do you use a lot of social media for recruiting, or can you give us a small insight?
Yeah, how do you communicate the culture outside, you mean? You know, that's obviously a challenge, you know, like you clearly can do, let's say, videos, photos of, you know, the team and so on, that works. I think also, you know, the people in your team will communicate out there, you know, I think that also works. But then actually the best way probably is to invite people to our office and they see it, you know, they're there, they see interactions between the teams, they see how people are there, and that's really what, you know, convinces them. It's hard to, you know, to have a meeting in a Starbucks here in Berlin with someone telling them about the culture in our team in Lisbon. That doesn't really work out, but you invite them there, and I think that's the best way. So you do need to have a good culture, but then bring the people to actually see it firsthand.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Mariano.